Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to this webinar on the fourth industrial revolution. My name is Joseph Neumeier, Associate Director of GDP Global. The very fact that we have received registrations from across Africa, South Africa, Namibia, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, Mauritius, into Europe, Germany, Portugal, the UK, Ireland, Sweden, right across to Estonia and back to Kuwait is, to me, testimony that we definitely have arrived in the fourth industrial revolution. To top it all up, I'm speaking from Johannesburg. My colleagues are sitting in Spain, and our guest speaker is linked to us from Pretoria. So welcome to you again, and thank you for joining us today. GDP Global, we are a niche consulting firm. Our clients are mostly international investment promotion agencies, ministries, municipalities, special economic zones, also donors like the African Development Bank, the German International Services, GIZ, the World Bank. And increasingly, also we get requests more and more from the private sector. For more info, go to www.gdpglobal.com.
Good afternoon and welcome to this webinar. First of all, a quick welcome from all our colleagues in and around Africa. You may well know some of them. Certainly those of you who are attending from the public sector will be familiar. But I also want to thank all of those coming from the private sector to join this webinar on this very interesting topic. We're very grateful to Aerosud and in particular to Johan for coming to share some of their business and corporate insights. So we're going to take a look at these key topics in this first intro presentation. So what are these technologies of the future? We're going to have a look at 3 or 4 principal technologies that we are presently using or should be using more. And I want to focus in my session more about the implications of this change of way of living our lives and doing our business. Are there opportunities? Are there threats? What are the challenges for all of us, especially for government? And I can refer you to a very good country case study for South Africa issued by the African Development Bank last year. It talks about ICT, information and communications technology, being almost, you could say, a human right alongside other factors as income equality, employment, education, social inclusion. So that is really the big goal for us to bear in mind and constantly to push and expect more from government anywhere in the world, but especially in Africa. So the first question I'll put to you, very simple, straightforward. What do drones, blockchain, 3D printing, regenerative medicine all have in common? Essentially, we can say that these technologies, these products, these business approaches, these services are changing the way things are made. They're changing the way things are done. They are changing the way we consume stuff. And this is going to be a constant and growing approach over the next 30 years, I would say, at least. So the term disruptive technologies, I think we've all heard about it. I wanted just to explain my view, very simplistic, about the pace of technological change, and change is driven by the level of use. So if there is a high demand for using something, then change is pressed on faster. There's an increasing demand for technology as time goes on. Things that are of low quality use maybe don't see any big changes in the way things are done. However, when we now look at what's going on, disruptive technologies are appearing in our lives, driven by a number of factors we'll look at, and these are changing the level of change in some of these areas of our lives and in business. So a disruptive innovation that actually will create new markets, new networks. So those are the opportunities from disruptive technology, disruptive innovation. It can also work in any type of market or value network. It actually will displace leading firms, leading products, leading alliances at times when you thought they were very secure. And in our lives, some of the things that we are actually learning quite a lot about, we use them in our lives, everywhere on the planet. The effect of disruptive technology in local transport. So the Uber taxis, we know in South Africa, has created a huge amount of disruption to the point where it's not accepted. It's creating all sorts of challenges, but it's not an easy application to see Uber and other technologies like that coming in and transforming the way we use public transport. And yet many of us as consumers of that service feel it's a great solution. An area in services, it also applies to tourism. It also applies to our local economies because we can empower ourselves to be involved in renting out our spaces if we have them. We can do a peer-to-peer agreement through an enabling platform like Airbnb. We know that we can get quality clients and we can also find quality properties of all shapes and sizes. Bottom left there is about the use of energy. I'm looking here at obviously energy in the home, could be energy in industry. Disruptive technologies that we're dealing with now are affecting that too. The way we monitor and manage energy consumption and even switching from one energy source to another during the day or through a production process. And one of my favorites there on the bottom right-hand corner is drones. We see them, are drones toys? Well, they can be toys. They can be used to transform agriculture into a kind of micro agriculture business. But here in this example, you can see drones are going to challenge the jobs of lifesavers on the beaches by being able to zip out to people in difficulty and drop them essential life rescuing equipment. Many, many new applications. Really, the mind boggles about the opportunities for entrepreneurs, small enterprises. In Southern Africa, we talk about SMME, small, medium, and micro enterprises. There are great opportunities for using this technology and creating business. We've heard about the fourth industrial revolution. In fact, this is an informative slide which comes in our learning packs as part of our online learning solutions. The fourth industrial revolution talks about so-called cyber physical systems. To me, that's a bit of jargon. I'll try and give some examples of what that means in practice. When I think of cyber physical systems, I'm thinking of the smartwatch that I'm wearing, sensors that I have in and around my house and home, in the car. And these things work together with me in the background now to help me make decisions, how to lead my life, how to stay healthy, what I should be eating. That is a very simplistic consumer area of application. So the fourth industrial revolution is building on the industrial phases of before. The last phase saw the introduction of computers and automation. And the fourth industrial revolution now is really taking this to a new level, involving such issues as artificial intelligence, machine learning, and much greater use of the internet. So we'll cover these topics. So we talked there a little bit about the jargon, AI, artificial intelligence, VR, virtual reality, AR, augmented reality, machine learning. These are topics that you should have some basic understanding of. The way I look at these is that computers are not only being programmed by their, shall we say, their owners, but computers are able to learn from the interaction with us as consumers and also with other computers. And they can learn and to anticipate what we're likely to do, what we're likely to need, and to actually make certain decisions for us. Machine learning is very obvious in areas like self-driving vehicles. A huge amount of technology goes with that in order for the machines to actually learn their way around and to do something which potentially, and as years go on, could be hugely important. Of course, we know that everything we are talking about is related to the internet. And during this coming phase, we are seeing now the development of the NGI, the next generation internet. So what we know about the internet today is changing dramatically in the background. And maybe we can talk a little bit about how next generation internet approaches are going to enable much of this activity. So I wanted to pick out a few examples of disruptive technologies. And the first one I could talk about is very easy, I think, for a lot of us to understand, and that is 3D printing or additive manufacturing. Actually, this technology is not new. It started back in the 80s, and it has been increasingly being used to innovate the way things are produced. And so I think that's an important point we should realize, that not all these technologies we're talking about are totally new. Many of them are being fully adapted and used now. Additive manufacturing, but essentially it's about printing process in 3 dimensions and allows you to do all sorts of very interesting things in business. I see an application most obviously in prototyping of new products, new components, very short production runs of essential components overnight. I think it's a very interesting area of disruptive technology, and one that leads on to other things. And I put there from motor parts to body parts. As we know, it's now possible for those working in the field of medicine and biomechanics to actually produce artificial limbs and lungs and other components of the body as a way to treat very difficult conditions that we may be suffering with. Linked to the medical sphere, I wanted to talk about regenerative medicine. Now, this is not necessarily directly linked to the internet or the Internet of Things, but the power of computing is helping physicians and those in the medical sphere to do all sorts of interesting things and associate this with some of the established applications. So things like stem cell research, immunomodulation therapy, tissue engineering, cell therapies, all of these things are related to the power of computing that we now have. The internet and the computing powers, together with human and medical requirements, deliver that form of development. Another area we may be very familiar with, even in these last months, instead of having to go to the GP, in fact, in Europe, the doctor doesn't want to see you these days. He'd much rather, or she'd rather, see you over a Skype call or some other virtual experience. Telemedicine and medical diagnostics are increasingly being internet enabled. It's actually in many ways a great solution. It's providing expert advice where it's needed, cost efficiently. So there are many great advantages, and they can create great social benefits to all our people. It's a great leveling up opportunity. But at the same time, technology is smart. Yes, machine learning is incredible. So things like assessing X-rays, MRI scans, these kind of things will actually no longer be needed to be undertaken by a highly paid radiologist. Computers, banks of computers are able to assess an MRI scan in seconds, where it may take a radiologist perhaps 20 to 30 minutes to come up with the same result. So there are jobs at risk, not just for maybe, shall we say, lower skill jobs, but some of the higher skill jobs in the medical sphere, maybe also in the legal sphere, financial services. These jobs are also threatened by the internet. We've heard about the Internet of Things, and there's a chart here. I tried to find a more recent one, bottom left. You'll see, and we know that over the last 5 to 10 years, we have been ourselves connecting many more devices to the internet. Going back a few years, we may have had a home internet access for our laptop computers. Now, I think most of us have at least 3 or 4 personal devices connected to the internet, maybe at the same time. And that's just us. When we think about our spouses, our children, our homes are full of internet connected devices. And in industry, we know that industry, in manufacturing and in services we use, for example, transportation services, there are thousands of sensors being used constantly to measure and monitor what is happening. And these are connected together via internet systems in order to enable our digital lives. So internet in the business and at home is very important. In Africa, we know one of the key economies is agriculture. Agriculture can be transformed through internet technologies. We can have autonomous vehicles. We can use micro agriculture using sensors and drone technologies. These are all great productivity tools. And in one sense, they're not great for the employment potential in the agriculture sector. But I look at it positively by thinking of the potential for entrepreneurship, for innovation in these sectors, the agriculture, agribusiness sector. And for every job or 10 jobs that may not be created, there could be 10 firms that can be created, and each of those can create employment opportunities as well. Another term that we hear a lot about is blockchain technology. The chain or the blockchain is a register of transactions, transactional database on the internet or maybe on the next gen internet, and it will help us to transact all sorts of things in our lives, in our business lives or personal lives, to allow for more so-called peer-to-peer transactions. And it's also linked to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is perhaps the current leading phase of blockchain activities on the internet. In financial services, we see the greatest use of blockchain technologies, but actually blockchain is going to affect us in all sorts of areas. It's already being used a lot in manufacturing for procurement management, critical life control, shipment of goods. It's also going to be used increasingly in retail and consumer entertainment, and even in government. It can be used in things like digital voting solutions. So blockchain and Bitcoin are definitely technologies of the future, and we need to think about those. Blockchain is part of the background, as I mentioned, to manufacturing, and it does also support business in terms of global value chain production activities. And that is something which allows Africa, Southern Africa, South Africa to be part of global value chains, but behind it is this kind of technology. So the implications are this: there will be job creation opportunities in this area, but there will also be some job losses. I touched on a few of the low-skilled job losses and even some of the high-skilled job losses. But in many cases, jobs will change. The nature of jobs will be changing. In fact, there'll be job replacement. So what was presently done by a semi-skilled worker will be done in the future by a so-called knowledge worker. And that requires a certain level of education and digital skills development in the country. So this is one of the implications for South and Southern Africa and the rest of the world, is to ensure that government is moving forward and ensuring education levels are there, digital skills are there. And it's also, I think, a very great opportunity for SMMEs in order to create and support entrepreneurs with their business. But of course, that does require an industrial policy and a business set of policies that allow entrepreneurs and SMMEs not just to struggle along, but to actually flourish and to deliver a huge component of the economic and job creation. The final comment I want to say there is about digital economic infrastructure. Countries and economies need to make sure that not only is there a state-of-the-art digital infrastructure, but that every individual, every person, a human right, everybody has access to the internet, has a basic level of training, has an affordable access to the digital economy, and can learn from the earliest years in working with this kind of technology. So thank you very much. I know that's a very cursory introduction. There are so many things we can talk about, but I'm very happy that I've been able to be involved and to start the discussion.
Thank you so much, John. Truly mind-boggling. And I don't think we can yet imagine the possibilities this technology provides us with in the future. You mentioned, John, that computers should be able to learn from us, and also computers should be able to learn from computers. I am looking very much forward for a computer who can answer at least 99% of all my emails. That would be so stunning. And yeah, let me not make too many words. That's me now. Talking a little bit about IR applications for Africa. I refer to the study, John has already mentioned it. That is really a very good study initiated from the African Development Bank. It's actually the only comprehensive study I have seen so far for Africa. Some recommendations for policymakers and businesses. Then I go into the internet usage and elaborate a little bit on there. The readiness of Africa is an important topic, I would believe. And then I'll focus on South Africa and the fourth industrial revolution. And what you see here, these are my colleagues. From the study, Unlocking the Potential of the Fourth Industrial Revolution in Africa, you see it here at the bottom. They have identified 5 domains for Africa where the fourth industrial revolution should be focused on. This agriculture, energy, industry, regional integration, and well-being, all our health. John has already mentioned quite a few examples of that. drones, IT controlled irrigation system. There is an interesting development in Uganda. Two gentlemen there have developed a biomedical smart checker to diagnose pneumonia. And it's in prototype phase. So I find that truly, truly, truly amazing. And as I said, I'll carry through these first couple of slides a little bit quicker. My main aim is for you to be stimulated. And if you have not read the study, please go there and do. The recommendations the study makes for African policymakers, I'm just highlighting a few. Think about incentives, financial, fiscal. Definitely, John has already mentioned it again, start to prepare the next generation Africa. It is essential beyond comprehension, I think, to educate the young generation on the subject. Government institutions, of course, need to be prepared as well, and maybe redesigned. And policy work is very essential. This development also needs policy regulation, and yeah, that needs to be done. Recommendations for business associations focus on raising awareness and providing information about the potential of these kind of technologies, and also increase investment into training. Because even those, my colleague always says, I'm BBT, I'm born before technology. But even so, we have not maybe directly been born into the technology. We can still learn it and be trained and apply it and become users, efficient users of it. And development partners should also raise awareness among African governments, finance research projects on the impact of the fourth industrial revolution. Where do we apply it in our individual countries, in our individual economies? How can they help us getting even the basics right? Water, housing, all the essentials. Research and development, of course, we need to do a lot more than that, especially in Africa, more than now, especially in Africa, I would say. And pilot projects is an important aspect to look at as well. Now, this map is a bit shocking because you see, wherever you see the dark colors, the internet usage is very low. The darkest color is 0 to 9%. And ideally, in my mind, this map should become blue as soon as possible. You see here DRC, I think this is Central African Republic, Chad, Niger. The only country which has a blue spot is Nigeria. And let me embark with one sentence on another aspect. I truly believe that the development, especially towards the fourth industrial revolution, is not only, but to a high degree, determining migration in the future. Just like a surfer needs the sea, an online surfer needs a good connection, and people will move where the opportunities are. And if we do not increase the technology overall in Africa, we have serious trouble. We could lose out on a lot of development. This is also it's called the global map of readiness. You have the high potentials, the leading, the nascent, and the legacy. Basically, what they have looked at is the future of the production capabilities in all the countries. And then I hope you can see that it might be a bit unclear. They looked at the structure of the production, complexity and scale, and the drivers of the production: technology, human capital, trade and investment, institutional framework, and so on. And a little bit shocking, but that's how it is. So what I wanted to say is, if you look at sub-Saharan Africa, each and every country is in the nascent stage. That means there's limited current base for production, for development in the sector. And it is at risk for the future. That means we're not putting enough energy, enough focus on the sector. So this is a bit concerning, and I think we need to work on that. Back to South Africa and the fourth industrial revolution. In March 2019, and I think President Cyril Ramaphosa was the first one to do that, and he should be applauded for that. He set up a public commission on the fourth industrial revolution and was approved and established under his presidency. And the objective is to coordinate SA's national response to deal with the fourth industrial revolution, to work out a plan, to work on policies and strategies. And just on the 23rd of October, the latest report from the Commission was published in the Gazette 43834. And interestingly, one suggestion was made where the experts of the Commission call that South Africa should launch its own internet satellite very quickly to provide quality connectivity for South Africa. And I've given the link here as well. Ladies and gentlemen, you will also be able in a few days to pull this presentation off of YouTube. Also stated in the report is what I call I have a dream. The Commission proposes a dream which in South Africa at least, maybe even in other countries, should be adopted and applied. South Africa will have a globally competitive, inclusive and shared economy with the technological capability and production capacity that is driven by people harnessing the fourth industrial revolution to propel the country forward towards its social and economic goals instead of falling behind. This is the dream, and I think it needs to be adopted and lived, I would say, by everyone. The Commission also gives some key lessons, and I've just done some excerpts. I hope you can read it clearly. I was trying to economize my time, and the screen print did not come out as clearly. But let me go into it. One says, success in the fourth industrial revolution will depend on our ability to unleash the full scientific, industrial, and creative capabilities of the South African society. Moving on here, despite the fact that South Africa is the most industrialized country on the African continent, it has not reaped the full benefits of previous industrial revolutions, owing to an interrupted history. And what many governments, and also the South African government, are trying to achieve is to use the fourth industrial revolution to leapfrog, to jump over previous revolutions where they have, in areas where they have missed out. To me, the most important sentence is at the bottom here. Whilst the South African state is currently fiscally constrained, it has a unique opportunity to use its buying power to ignite the creation of industries of the future. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this is absolutely right. It is almost as important as food and water and housing to develop this technology further. What are the key recommendations? Overall, with the fourth industrial revolution, the government is of course trying to overcome what is called here the triple scourge. Poverty is over 50%, unemployment, the official rate, 32%, the youth unemployment even higher, more than 50%, and inequality, we top the scale currently again. John has alluded to it. We need to invest in human capacity. We need to train. I have a separate slide for that. And I think we also need to specifically educate ourselves and our children on the ethics. How do we ethically deal with this kind of technology where everything is so quickly and easily accessible? Once it's out in the space, in the cyberspace, it can be accessed somehow. You might know, you might not, South Africa has the third highest number of cybercrime attacks worldwide, currently amounting to about 2 billion. South African government, 2 billion rand, apologies for that. South African government intends and is recommended to build and own its own significant fourth industrial revolution infrastructure, undersea cables, data centers, fiber optic networks, platforms for citizen participation, create its own research institutes focusing on solutions across the spectrum. And they have created this term hashtag STEAMI, which stands for science, technology, engineering, art, maths, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And of course, data sovereignty is also an interesting sort of aspect of the fourth industrial revolution. Own our own strategic data and ensure that the citizen data are safe. We can make money on data mining and so on. I need to watch my own time a little bit, but John, feel free to interrupt me. In terms of infrastructure, affordable broadband should be made available to all citizens. I'm just highlighting a few points here. In order for us to become an active participant in the fourth industrial revolution, we require much more inventions and knowledge production to get there. Investment in research innovation is absolutely essential. Otherwise, we're not winning, as you can see on the readiness graph earlier. We need to empower the current workforce towards the fourth industrial revolution. I think that it's clear. And also we need to look into our small, micro, and medium enterprises, and we must enable them and give them the opportunities as well, from a state perspective, to take part in this revolutionary development. The Commission has also come up with this table. You can see here's the current level of technology utilization. And they've used what we call in South Africa the robot system, the traffic light system. There is nothing green currently, but the potential for South Africa, you see more than half green in artificial intelligence, big data analysis, blockchain, Internet of Things. So for investors, there is also a lot of opportunity here to break this down and to say, in which segment am I operating and how can I invest in South Africa or in Africa as a whole. Talk a little bit about advantages for South Africa. We do have a comparatively good overall infrastructure to build on. We do have a comparatively strong production manufacturing capabilities, and Johan will, with his examples, take us there in just a short while. We have a good IT infrastructure as well. MTN, Telecom, Vodacom, Cell C is operating here and across Africa, actually. And we have a high percentage of youth population for which or for whom it is very easy to deal with this new technology because they've grown into it. Across the country, you can see these beautiful trees, and this is our new addition to the Big Five. Once again, John has already mentioned it, but let me go a little bit deeper. We need to prepare our younger generation for the jobs of the future. And specifically, we need to start at schools, grade 1, maybe even earlier. And we need to change in many schools, I believe, not only in Africa, but also in Africa, the curricula, and align it to the fourth industrial revolution, to all these topics, robotics, artificial intelligence, drone technology. And we need to upskill on an ongoing basis our youth and young adults, and even those who are not, as I mentioned earlier, born into technology. We can still learn and apply. And foster entrepreneurs so that we have job providers rather than job seekers. John has also mentioned the 3D printing, and he's linked it a lot to health. But there's an example here in Nantes in France. Many houses had been prototyped before, but this one is the first one where a family is moving in shortly. The structure of the house, you can see here in the lower right how it's done, has been printed in 54 hours and is 20% cheaper than a conventional house. It's a 5-bedroom house apparently, And maybe there is also an opportunity for South Africa in our shortage of housing for our population. Absolute key, as always, is that whatever we plan, we need to implement. And I think specifically on the implementation side, South Africa and probably Africa as a whole needs to become much stronger. Let me now go to our guest speaker. Johan Pretorius is the Aerosud Group in IT leader and strategist with more than 20 years of information and communication technology experience.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Good afternoon, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. Good. So I'm also going to just touch lightly on all the aspects of our journey into the fourth industrial revolution. But anyone's feel free to contact me if they want to find out more in detail. So each one of these slides actually can be talked about for days on end. But let me not hold you up and go right through it. So this is a story on how we interpreted 4IR and how we applied it within our own business and how it actually became a way of life. So as he said, I'm Johan Pretorius, and obviously this is our company, and obviously we need to adapt to a new normal with COVID that came along. So obviously there's this disruption of technologies and businesses, but there's disruption all over in the form of pandemics. So we need to set up our businesses to be stable and survive these waves of disruption that's going to come along. And it's inevitable. We know this. Quick overview of our business. We are a tier 1 and tier 2 supplier to the OEMs, Airbus and Boeing. We manufacture aircraft parts. We are a co-designer on the A400M, so we're not just a manufacturer, we're also a designer on the specific aircraft. And this is all the qualifications that we have as a business, which means we work in a very highly regulated environment, which requires a very good discipline. So our company, where we started off in 1990, where we were primarily in the military space. And then in 2000, we got our first contract with Boeing, and we needed to comply with all their expectations. And that's where the business started growing, and the rest is history. So up to the latest, we formed a number of businesses and business units that's attached to Aerosud, with the latest being the Aerosud Octa, and I'll speak a little bit more about that at a later stage. Our core capabilities, this is what we do primarily in our business. So it's metallics, composites, plastics, the welding, etc., all on aircraft parts. And with the formulation of the Aerosud Octa business unit, we now also offering digital offerings to small, medium enterprises. And I'll go a little bit deeper into that at a later stage. Typically, the parts that we manufacture that goes into these aircrafts. And again, if anyone wants to know more detail about these, feel free to contact me. So the market reality, and this is pre-COVID, there was expected to be a huge rise in terms of the aerospace economy. These were the numbers that we got and that we needed to forecast for, and we obviously needed to gear our business to service this demand. What we very quickly realized is that we cannot have a linear growth in order to service this demand. We can't employ more people and grow our facility in order to meet that. That is not profitable. We need to decouple our overhead expense and our profit lines. So we had to come up with some new ideas to be better, faster, and deliver quickly to our customer without expanding our operating expense. So these are obviously the realities that came out of that. So production drives, Industry 4.0, technology, lower costs, disruptive manufacturing practices, etc., etc. And obviously that conflicts. So profitability conflicts with reliability. So just a quick, we realized that we needed to become agile as a business. Now, agile is a very big topic within the business. I simplified it to try and explain. Essentially, the elements of agile is you need to be hyper aware so that you can make better decisions. And once you've made those decisions, you need to be able to execute fast. And that is in essence what agile means. But it's not just agile teams, it's businesses as a whole. So your decision making at a top level, your priorities, your projects, your customers you take on, all of that needs to be agile. So we've set up a program that actually goes through the setup of this within a business as well. So for us, it became important. So we needed to be quicker, faster, cheaper. We needed to be agile and everything. And how do we achieve that? If we come back to that circle, you need to be hyper aware. And to be hyper aware, you need to start automating and how you get information. So we needed to integrate all our systems. And we realized that without integration, we won't be able to compete in the future. So in the legacy business, typically everyone looks internally to their businesses. We have our own challenges in terms of people, processes, practices, and technologies, and it's not cheap, especially in a highly regulated environment, to get the right skills, the right software and tools. And then we start realizing, yeah, but we need to integrate. So we need to start worrying about those same aspects on the supplier side as well as the customer side. So which makes the problem even bigger. So what happens is you get a requirement from your customer, you need to comply. You push that down to your supplier, he needs to comply. And eventually the customer wants to make sure that the supplier sees. So you have all these links and you need to be able to show evidence of traceability of all the work and transactions that's gone through the system. So this is sort of where the blockchain concept comes into play. In a manufacturing environment, we call it full product lifecycle management, where you have a full view and full traceability right from the ideation of the product right through to the delivery of the customer. So the approach we took is to start understanding our own businesses, where we have our own processes, tools, and people. And we needed to integrate those systems so that we can become more aware and see where our bottlenecks are and where there's opportunities for improvement, and then roll that out to our suppliers and eventually then connect into our customers. So we literally vertically and horizontally integrated our business systems, people's processes, tools, and infrastructure, and then obviously link that right into our customers and suppliers. So what is the role of the integration of integrated systems and solutions in the industry? So essentially, this is what the future looks like. I mean, we work between over borders. There's government legislation, ISO standards that impacts on every business, which is specific to specific sectors, to specific regions, etc. And all of that needs to be regulated and manufactured. So essentially, we need to end up with integrated solutions across the board. And this is where IoT starts going, again, PLM, blockchain, all those type of things. So we do global. We don't sell any parts locally in South Africa. We import all our materials from the international market. We add value, and then we export 100% of the product. So we needed to have full control, and it's in the highest regulated environment, manufacturing environment, which is aerospace. So you need to be able to track that data, store the data for 30 years, plus the life cycle of the aircraft. So potentially you need to keep full traceability for approximately 50 years. So you can imagine the amount of data and paperwork we will need to keep track of. So the key principles of integrated solutions, this is what we sort of, our insights throughout our journey in the business. We need to become customer and supplier focused. I mean, our business exists to serve a market. And if we're not focused, then obviously this will become an issue. We need to align all our initiatives with our business goals. It needs to be business outcome focused. So everything that we decide to implement, we need to put the right KPIs in place to see if it made a difference to the bottom line. If you cannot translate that, then you should go back to the drawing board and figure out what difference you're going to make to the bottom line. It needs to be driven from a top down. Leadership needs to buy in and they need to support it. You need to involve all your people. There's a huge change that's happening in the business, and if it happens in silos, it creates a lot of anxiousness, and people need to understand why do we need to change and what new skills needs to be learned and taught in order to go along on this journey. And I'll come back a little bit more on people and skills a little bit later. we need to empower the people. So we need to make sure that people have the ability to learn these skills, have access to it, and have access to people that can mentor them. You need to take a process approach. So you need to define your process and follow that process until you collectively decide to make a change to the process. So continue improvement becomes a continual activity. A friend of mine, Mr. Perrone, he's a consultant in Ireland. He says if change is difficult, make it continuous and make small steps as you go along. Take a factual approach to decision making, and this is where data comes into play. So as you start collecting data, you need to analyze that data and make sure that you have the supporting data that will assist you with achieving your goals. Um, it needs to be mutually beneficial to the business as well as your customer. Data sovereignty and security, so cybersecurity, and as you know, in South Africa, we got a huge issue with that. So we need to make sure we have all the systems and controls in place, not just to protect our own data, but to protect the customer's data. And you can imagine with aircraft such as Boeing and Airbus, after 911, there is a huge drive to make sure that data is protected and not leaked. It must be affordable and sustainable. And this is again a conflict situation, especially for small, medium enterprises. There is solutions out there that meet all these requirements, but it's simply just not affordable for small, medium enterprises. So we need to be able to lower the barriers to market, and these are typically the barriers. And then we need to take a systems approach to management. And then obviously the above needs to become a lifestyle. It's not an event, it becomes a lifestyle. And then obviously the advantages outweighs the disadvantages. And maybe the disadvantages, it comes back to people. I think people are still one of the biggest challenges in terms of the fourth industrial revolution. Essentially, uh, we need to change the minds of people. Where in the past one would go to university and study in a specific direction, we need to get to a point where we as individuals start managing our own obsolescence in terms of our skills and our knowledge. So we as individuals need to constantly be aware of what is happening in the industry in terms of my skill and my contribution to the business, and what changes do I need to make in order to stay relevant within my business. What new skills do I need to gain in order to move forward? Because we know technology is going to start moving exponentially, which means our skills and our knowledge needs to move along with that. So we need to start doing this micro credentialing, learning just enough to take us to the next step and stay up to date. Taking a 5-year, 6-year course and becoming an engineer, and then 5 years down the line, that specific requirements no longer needed or replaced by another technology or by automation, then obviously you sit in a position where you say, I've lost my job. So the job loss is a sensitive discussion, but I think it comes down to the mindset of the youth and people. We need to constantly keep our own knowledge up to date, manage our obsolescence. So what we do in our business as a frame of reference, we adopted this from Boeing, is where the blue line is essentially our physical environment. We have a need from a customer, and it goes through a bunch of processes right to the point where we deliver the customer, and we start creating digital twins of each one of those. So digital twin is one of those technologies, disruptive technologies mentioned, but it's got different meanings for different environments. So you could have a digital twin of your business process. You could have a digital twin of your facility, and so forth and so forth. So we're using this as a reference when we build our systems to make sure that we have an augmented environment where we can analyze and experiment and make sure that we can apply that in our physical environment. So from a digital twin facility, I mean, this is just a good example where there's a requirement to manufacture a part, there's an order, a RFQ that goes in, and then the quote goes out, the order comes in, and then they give us the data. And that data needs to go through our product lifecycle management system, which is essentially the blockchain in the manufacturing environment, where it keeps full track of all the different processes that part has gone through to be manufactured, keeps all the quality data, it keeps all the necessary parameters and feedback right to the point where the customer gets the part, and we use that data then to store and analyze to make sure that we can make the next part that comes into the system even better and faster and cheaper. So enabling the business of engineering. A business of engineering requires more than just a CAD PDM. In the past, your PDM system was your sort of management system, and that was sort of the view of what a PLM should be. Nowadays, it needs to include everything: your system, your products, your software, your electronics, electrical information, mechanical information, and all the types of data that is actually linked to the manufacturing of that specific part. And this is where your IoT comes into play. We track specific things like temperatures. We track ohmage on parts. We track the mixtures on paints, temperatures in certain areas. And all of that feeds right into the manufacturing documentation and becomes part of the data pack at the end of the day that ensures that part was manufactured according to the customer requirements. So it's a very complex environment, and doing it manually, you can imagine there's a lot of risk where persons could be sick or they could make mistakes and everything. So those are the first software robots that we essentially put in place that automates our environment. So the PLM definition, how we see it, it's really a collection of your people, data, business processes, and all the applications that's associated. So, and that ends up right to the point where we say we need to have access to the right information, and they need to have action. The people need to have access to that information at the right time in order to manufacture the part and deliver to the customer. And then it's ongoing. So it must be a persistent practice within your business. So how did that ended up for us? Obviously, the journey is not finished. It's continuing, but essentially what we've done, we've managed to integrate horizontally and vertically our manufacturing execution systems, our enterprise resource planning systems, our quality management systems, the PLM systems. We've got our full industrialization managed through this using different kinds of project management concepts and methodologies, which is also integrated into these systems. We're pulling and submitting data directly to our customer systems and our supplier systems, and that all links to our HR systems to make sure the competency and the build manuals and all those of the actual resources is managed in order to comply to each one of these system requirements. And all of that is rolled into a central data center. So the integration was done internally by our own unit, which we call the Aerosud unit, and this is essentially what our business looks like now. So subcontractors and suppliers are essentially virtually sitting within our business, even though they're sitting on their premises, and we are interacting with our customers through their secure electronic data interchange mechanisms that they've established, and it's an ongoing process. So this is what our value chain looks like currently, where we supply worldwide, where we get a demand, and it goes through our whole business and our suppliers right through back to the customers, and we are situated on the far end of Africa. So this is just the order in which we've sort of implemented all our automation and system. The results from that, up to now, we've managed to bring our production lead times down from 50 days to 17 days. We have a high reliability in completion date, so we don't miss our delivery dates often unless there's something major happening like COVID, and then we need to play up catch up. We reduced our inventory right through the value chain with about $5 million US. We improved our delivery times, 92 to 98, reduced delays from 8% to 1.5. We've increased volume without actually increasing our work source or our facility with 20. And then obviously our new product industrialization lead time came down from 120 days to 80 days. So this is not the final state. We are constantly reviewing all our data and our processes and improving as we go along to bring this down even further. Maybe not mentioned here is we've also, in terms of our welding, we've introduced robotic welding, where we had quite a large failure rate in terms of our welds on the aircraft parts, and that was based on people skills, and they need to be certified every 6 months. And if they're feeling off or sick, they lose their certification and they're unable to work on those work packages. So we built 2 robots using artificial intelligence that now gives us a 95% success rate, and we've reduced the risk of people. The people that used to do the welding, they are still using for overflow and for backup, and they were educated to actually configure and program the welders as required. Okay, so what are the challenges that we got? I mean, obviously, when there's a need to go faster, quicker, and you need to look at the money, we start getting into challenges in terms of software, data, people, skills, and obviously in the environment and the threats from other competitors. So this I'm just going to run through quickly for the sake of time, so we still have some
Yes, Johan. I was
Q&A.
just going to remind you.
Yeah. Yeah, good. So obviously we've had some challenges in terms of software systems. You can read through that as we go along. This presentation will be available afterwards. And then obviously the challenges in terms of data integration. So it's very costly. You need to look at both sides. You need to interact with the customers. You need to do it vertically, horizontally, each one of them coming with their own challenges. I think the biggest thing to mention on this page for SMEs, the challenge is the cost and the availability of resources to implement. In terms of people and skills, obviously the education levels, we're having challenges with that. Whatever comes out of the universities and schools is not aligned with our business needs. So we need to invest a lot of time and effort to get them up to speed, to introduce them into our environment. And then there was an overall scarcity of awareness regarding technologies and agility. It's as if when the youth comes out of the education system, they've never heard of Industry 4.0. They've never heard of automation. So that was a big issue. So the change management within the business was very huge, and we put a specific program in place to not just look at those aspects, but also at how we use resources, create the right relationships in order to get the right results. And then obviously the approach to the environment. And this one I will speak a little bit more about in the next slide. But again, there should be a pragmatic approach when you address your environment, rather than just going to buy certain technologies, hoping that it will solve your problems. Okay, so the way forward, how we see it and how we took the approach, we need to your own need and situation. You need to have an understanding for that. You need to understand your landscape, what type of business, what type of sector you are in. You need to understand your systems, your people, your environment, and then you need to decide, okay, where are you currently in that whole picture of all the industrial revolutions? And we got a feeling that most of South Africa is stuck here just over 2, midway into 3, and we need to actually leapfrog to the next level. And we run the risk of catching the downslope. Okay, so everyone can try and figure out where they fit and then take that approach. So we say you must have a goal and a roadmap to guide you, and this is a very important factor. You must have trusted and competent partners. You cannot do this alone. So you need to find the right people to assist you going through this process. And then obviously you need to start looking at best practices and standardizing in your business, not do niche stuff, because your business will suffer every time there's a next disruption, for you to align that. Okay, so I think this is probably the most important slide. So what we said is the approach that we took. We first look at the people and the culture within the business to get that agile mindset and make sure that people understand why this needs to happen and get the people to go along. So the change management from a people point of view. Then we look at the priority in terms of, okay, what do we need to do before we start putting in technologies? So we say, well, you have a current infrastructure, you got current processes, and you want to obviously diversify your business. and have more offerings to your customer. So essentially what we're saying is you need to first stabilize what you have, then leverage what you have to try and automate as much as possible to release your resources. As once you have released resources, use those resources to innovate. And if all your resources are consumed 100%, you will not innovate because you need time to innovate. So you need to release your resources. Once you've innovated, then you can start creating new business models. Then you can accelerate your business. So those are the 4 aspects: stabilize, automate, innovate, and then accelerate. So we use the McKinsey Digital Compass as a reference, because before you start looking at technologies, you need to, and this is a bigger picture on the other side, you need to first say, well, what is the goal I want to achieve, or what is the problem I want to resolve? So if you say I want to reduce my maintenance costs, these are the technologies you can leverage in order to address. So you need to decide what's the biggest problem you first want to address, and then pick the proper technology in terms of these technologies to help you solve that problem. So it's really not about the technology. It's about the goal or the problem you want to resolve, and then matching the right technology that will assist you in achieving that. Okay, so obviously when the COVID struck, we needed to re-strategize, and essentially we said, well, we cannot have we need to increase our throughput because there's a bigger demand. We need to minimize our operating expense, and then obviously we needed to minimize our investment, and we came up with a strategy to do that. So essentially, we needed to create new business offerings, where we said we needed to create a digital life cycle and a design for certification offering to small medium enterprises. We need to create where they can use something like theory of constraints in order to increase their flow through the existing environment. And then obviously we had an inherent affinity for digitalization of business processes. So essentially we created the Aerosud Octai, which is now available for small, medium enterprises. And our goal and objective there is to lower the barriers to entry for small, medium enterprises. Assist them taking a pragmatic approach, seeing how they can leverage their existing environment to move forward, and then start building from there going onward to accelerate their business. So we are essentially product agnostic. We look at what they have and see how we can leverage that, but we set out to be agile and disruptive. So we will challenge the norms out there and find out where we can leverage that to get a better throughput. So essentially what we did is we adopted a platform, which is a business automation framework. It's a free framework. Obviously, you need some skills to configure it, but go and Google RAS Innovator. And we're starting to build our digital lifecycle management on top of that framework. And we've developed an internal application platform, which is essentially a digital digital manufacturing platform. That is a business process as a service that takes the headache of having the people, the skills, the infrastructure, and the processes within your business, essentially outsourcing that to a platform at a fraction of the cost. This platform is called MWorks, and again, this is to stabilize, automate, and innovate and accelerate your existing business. If you want to know more about that, you can just click on the. So we are a manufacturing company that realized that we needed to assist other companies also to succeed and thrive. Good case here is we used all of this plus machine learning and artificial intelligence to assist during the COVID-19 pandemic to help innovators going through the whole industrialization process, getting their products certified, and then going into a fast manufacturing process using technologies such as 3D printing. And this was collaborated between all these factors at the bottom. And that's that. We strive to make a difference and assist the South African industry to go forward.
Thank you very much, Johan, for that. Ladies and gentlemen, the floor is open. There is a question. Which is the most important disruptive technology in your view, your economy, or your business? Anybody wants to comment on that? Nobody?
Somebody's waving the hand. Hi, everyone. I can hear one here. It's actually my colleague in Mexico. Let's see what Carlos has to say. You like governance and accountability.
Yes, Christina, many thanks and congratulations for all the great quality team as always GDP has. Thanks, John, for your talk as well. And yes, I was saying that I think it would be very important to have some kind of e-government, but in terms of really getting the civil society, let's say, organized in terms of having real and timely accountability of the decision-making processes of the government, because traditionally we think about governance or accountability, but the next step could be optimization of resources, not only accountability, but the way they were invested. So that's something that for me is very important. And as well, John, I was posing a question whether the COVID has impacted the short and medium term plans of Aerosud. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carlos. So
Okay,
would
John.
Johan like to respond to that last question about how has COVID affected the Aerosud business in
Yeah,
round
sure.
terms? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously, it halved our order book. I mean, so it had a major financial impact on our business, and obviously, we had to leverage our partners as well as our investors to sort of get us through this. But I think we have a very positive outlook. I think our business is every threat, accident, or problem is a learning opportunity. So we took it on a positive side to see how we can leverage what we've learned to make our business more future proof. So to a certain extent, COVID has just accelerated the rate of change within the business. It's accelerated the need for digital transformation, and it also accelerated the need to diversify our business. So it and obviously we all now have a common enemy internally. So it also, to a certain extent, where there may have been siloed behavior before, pulled the whole business together because we now have a common enemy to defeat. So I think there was more positives that came out of the COVID than the negatives.
Thank you very much. Very interesting, Johan. Thank you. Maybe I could switch to another industry sector or economic sector, and that is agriculture and agribusiness, agro-processing. And we have a lot of interest in that in Southern Africa. We have people like Kaifas, who's on the call. We have Dinesh Mario from SADC Secretariat, and also Rebenem Makwa from Lesotho. I'd be very keen to get your thoughts, colleagues, whether you see in the short, medium term opportunities for IR in agriculture, agro-processing, or do you only see the downsides? Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much, John and team. This was a creative presentation and session. For me, I think the one problem that we will need to solve to be able to have quick adaptation and quick adoption of these technologies in terms of industrial revolution, especially in agriculture. We then have to also do the same disruptions in financing, because this technology is like Johan, when they come as expensive. Even if you look into agriculture, the good thing is now we know you don't need to worry about having the best soils as much as possible now. You don't need to worry about having the best land. But then you can then, with the best technology in irrigation, in protective equipment, also in terms of your soil mediums or whatever mediums you're using in place of soils, the varieties are improving because of the technologies. But the problem is always it's expensive. then how do we then bring in new financing for this? For me, I see more new jobs coming in. For instance, our agriculture has always been stagnating, but now with these technologies, we can do more. So for instance, Lesotho, we're placing ourselves as a future, maybe horticulture production hub, especially when you're looking at those niche, you may say products, but then some of those niche market entries that we have also realized that we can achieve. But the question is always, how do you finance this? I don't believe the answer is typically FDI. Maybe FDI if you're looking at VC, if you're looking at blended financing, but I think also even technology manufacturers and distributors need to come in terms of bringing in new technology financing. Maybe it's time for lease finance now.
Thank you very much, Marquardt. That's very interesting insights from Lesotho. There is a question in the chat. Excuse me for commenting. I know Joseph will jump in as well.
I was just going to say, but please carry on.
A question from Villian. Villian, excuse me pronunciation. Johan, the question is there in the chat.
Yes, I'll read it and then
Yes.
I'll respond to it. So Mr. Villian would have liked to know as to what extent has Aerosud thus develop a platform for industrialization that has application in many other sectors and value chains. So this is the beauty of it. I mean, we went through this whole thing with a primary focus on additive manufacturing. And through that, we've actually discovered that we have an automation framework that's applicable in any business, any sector. The platform itself, the technology we based our platform on, can have infinite processes, business processes programmed and automated. So even though we started off with AM, that was where our focus was. Essentially, it can be adapted for any and every business very quickly, like the agile platform that we built for industrialization on the COVID-19 initiative. Only took us 2 weeks to build that whole process and automate it. So it's definitely, it's not limited to just additive manufacturing. It can be configured for any business. And as I say, the software is free. You just need the people to assist you to configure it.
Thank you, Johan. That's great. I'm going to ask another colleague of ours from Peru, Lima. Mario is on the line early in the morning. I wonder, Mario, if you can talk to us, tell us a little bit about the Peruvian experience, of Peruvian approach to 4IR, government engagement, and how companies are reacting. Have you anything you can share with us?
Hello, John. Hello, everybody. How are you?
Great.
It's early here in Peru. This is a very, very interesting thing here in Peru because the technology changes everything, especially in this time. Now, for example, there is, you mentioned about telemedicine. Now there is a lot of initiative here in Peru about telemedicine, for example. So it's a very wide thing, but I think that it's difficult to speak about all things here now. So congratulations, because it was a very, very nice webinar, John.
Well, we enjoy it. It's great, and to have such an interested group participating. Joseph, we are at the deadline. Please bring us in towards the close of the webinar.
We are at the deadline. Let me just make one final point. Carlos also commented on new jobs, replacement and loss of jobs. Probably where every country purposely needs to effectively integrate the low-income people, not only because of humanitarianism, also for social stability. No, Carlos, you're absolutely right. And I think, first of all, to come back to the people, as Johan has also mentioned, we must never forget, whatever technology we develop, it is still developed by the people. Even if the computer talks to the computer, people are behind all that. And we need to constantly, I think, remain positive and not see the changes too much as job losses, but rather constantly focus on how do we transform it? How can we absorb the people into the new technology? What could we do? How do we transform the whole job market, the whole university, schools, everything to fit into the future? No other comments? There's one more message here. We need more companies building open systems, perhaps formed in agriculture, as Aerosud has done. Wow. Thanks, Reboneng, for that. May I hear it say thank you again to all of you.
Thank you all for being part of this. I watch this space because we're having more webinars in the coming months. Yes, we're at least having one per month in South Africa. So cheers to you all.
So just one last thing before I'll just raise my hand there. Just to
Oh,
mention, if anyone is in the Pretoria area and would like to take a walkthrough through our facility, our doors are always open for any visits. Just look me up and then we'll set up, and then you're more than welcome. Drink a cup of coffee, ask a couple of questions, maybe take a walk through, see how we do things. Yeah.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Bye to you all.
Thank you all, everyone. We should say goodbye now of the webinar.
Okay.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, everyone. It's a great show.
Thank you. Okay,
The way to
bye.
go.
Thank you, Charles. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Charles, Carlos, Mario, everyone.
Okay.
Johan,
Everyone,
especially. Thank you, sir.
Cheers. It's a pleasure. Let's talk again, John. And
Certainly will.
yeah, Joseph, cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye.